What is it that you know from the 50 plus years of work that you've done working with plants as a form of medicine that the average person on the street doesn't know?
How close we are to having I think life is a miracle, as I said in that early encounter. And we can realize the miracle within us if we just trust it. I've got a few guides to what I call health empowerment, things that you can do yourself at home just to begin to understand what's going on in here and to nourish it. And the plants are in my world, one of the most effective ways of supporting that inner miracle that we have to nourish our health, to empower us. I sometimes think that medicine is extraordinary. I mean, we now live with cancer. We used to die with it. Almost all the major illnesses of the past have now had treatments for. But if you've got a chronic condition, you're still left with yourself, and you're maybe not feeling so good in yourself. I sometimes think that a lot of medicine is a bit like fast food delivery. We have a meal brought in because it's convenient, but that also de-skills us. We've stopped learning how to cook even. I remember going to New York back in the 80s and surprised to find that so many apartments in New York didn't have kitchens because everyone went out to eat. And I thought, gosh, you're losing all those skills of making food and enjoying it and sitting it down over a table. I think medicine, we use far too many antibiotics. We use, these PPI things called omeprazole for our acid reflux, the most widely prescribed drug in this country, and I think US also, mostly unnecessary. We use a lot of anti-inflammatories just because it's sore, without asking why is it sore and why are we suppressing one of our body's main defenses, because inflammation is a defense. So these are things that you learn as you get into this world, that a lot of what we think are problems are solutions waiting for support.
Because I think most people would think that is medicine and
that is a food.
That's food.
Yes. Well, you're right.
Medicine, food.
Yeah, you're quite right. That's medicine, that's a food. What I'm saying is that there's a spectrum. And we may talk about that raspberry because it's red, and we might talk about the broccoli because it's green, and there's oranges, colours there. All of these colours actually have properties that are actually quite valuable properties for our circulatory health, for our gut health, our brain health. And the more the science is looking at it, the more amazing it's looking. These things have medicinal properties.
So you're saying that this is medicine as well?
Yes.
Not
Let
just
food
this.
be thy medicine is what old Hippocrates said 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago.
Is it the Chinese that are particularly big on herbal medicines?
Yes. Almost anywhere. I mean, there's only 5 countries in the world that are not big on herbal medicine. And I'll tell you who they are, and you can see if you can draw your own conclusions. UK is 1, US is the 2nd, Canada is the 3rd, Australia and New Zealand. Now, can you think of something that combines them all together?
Yeah,
they're originally white English-speaking countries. If you go across to France, the channel here, go to any pharmacy, most of the medicine stocks on the pharmacy are herbal. If you go to some parts of Germany, you have to sit a herbal exam to get your license. And further east, in the old Soviet bloc where they couldn't afford the pharmaceutical industry, they had homegrown, primarily plant-based medicines much more widely. Going to Asia, it's the majority by far. And doctors and people working with plants and acupuncture in China work together without thinking about it. And many doctors use plants in their as their medicines.
Yeah, how different, because I've never really spent a significant amount of time in China, how different is the perception of herbal medicines there than it is out on the streets of London?
They don't think twice about it, is what they grow up with. They, like a lot of people, we would say regretfully, do seem to want to do more things like the West does. So they adopt more Western habits, and as soon as you earn a bit of money, you tend to adopt more Western lifestyles and think that the herbal thing is for your parents and grandparents. So there's still that trend even in Asia. But they start from a much broader base of experience.
Why should anyone care? I have ibuprofen at home. I have medicine that I can have in the cupboard. I have, cough syrups if I get sick. If I get the flu, I have some flu pills that I brought from the pharmacy. Why should anyone care about what we're going to talk about today?
I suppose the answer is in my practice. So I see patients 3 sessions a week. And these are people, most of them have been around the block. They've had treatments for their conditions, sometimes for many years. They're often living with chronic complex conditions, and they're sore, they're tired, their energy's gone. They've been told that we can't just keep taking the pills. We've done all the tests, there's nothing else we can do. Time and time again, that's when the cookie crumbles. Because then you realize the ibuprofen and the quick pills ain't doing it anymore. There's a bigger health need that needs somehow fixing. And that's when they come to me as a practitioner. And I give them things that they can see improving their health, their sleep, their eating, their whatever it is that's not, their energy levels, whatever it is that's not playing properly. I see myself as a fine-tuning or upping the performance. When someone comes to me and they say, I've got whatever it is, arthritis or skin disease or whatever, I will politely take all the notes down, but that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in where that came from. What is the misbehavior? What is the poor performance that explains why all this happened? And often you find they had pneumonia at the age of 3, or they had glandular fever at the age of 15 or 16, and things took a turn then, and you can see the trail. And often what I'm doing is going backwards and fixing things that weren't fixed back a long time ago. Working on digestion particularly, because that's where we work. Kidney function, liver function, circulation, up to the brain where we're dealing in that area. So we're looking at the performance of the body, and it's only when it doesn't behave that you notice the need to doing it.
How many patients have you seen in your career, do you think? Thousands of patients?
I would say upwards of 10,000 each for an hour or so at a time to start with, so we get deep into the story and then rolling on. At any one time, I've got 200 running, I'm actively treating, and a couple hundred.
And what are the range of illnesses or conditions that those patients have had? And when you think about the most remarkable or most interesting case studies, the most reliable case studies that you have, what are the conditions that are at the center of those case studies?
Have you got a medical encyclopedia anywhere?
I'm going to write down the key ones.
No. I mean, it's literally, I don't know if I've seen everything in the medical encyclopedia, but I've seen most things. I mean, literally everything comes in, because mostly it's chronic anyway when they come and see me. And it can be anything. I mean, about a quarter of my patients are living with cancer. So that's one big group. I'm not treating the cancer. I'm helping them to live better with whatever it is they're dealing with. About another, at least a third, a bit more, living with chronic inflammatory disease, autoimmune diseases, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, psoriasis, things that are more complicated than you can shake a stick at. And again, we're not dealing with the end result. We're looking at what may be leading up to that and seeing if we can improve underlying functions. But literally anything can come by.
Is there particular case studies of patients that you've worked with that stand out to you, that you're most proud of, or that were eureka moments in your own sort of journey?
Most of my stories are like journeys. So you see little steps, and you're with somebody often for a long time, and you just see changes in the way that they change over the weeks and months. So, to say I've got an instant eureka moment, I've pulled together a few stories just knowing I was going to come to them, and just they're a motley mix. And in fact, I made notes because it's sometimes better to remind myself of the sort of things I did, because each of these patients will walk out with 5 or 6 or 8 different plants. And the reason I put them together is because they have a unique story. So probably the one with the most complex one is someone, all the names are changed, by the way, someone called Heather, who's 65, and she had a really severe complex condition called erythema multiforme, which is a complex skin disease that's really distressing, very upsetting. What we know about it is that it's linked possibly to other infections. So we actually spotted mycoplasma pneumonia is likely implicated. She had previously had a lot of lung damage. In her youth, she had early pneumonia, and she was diagnosed with a chronic obstructive pulmonary thing, bronchiectasis as it happened. Then she got COVID badly, and most of her trouble started after that. She also had vitamin B12 deficiency, pernicious anemia we call it, which is an autoimmune problem of the gut lining, stops the vitamin B12 being absorbed. Those were in her background story. The lungs, because it was the earliest, and probably the main factor, were first my focus, and the second was what was lining the stomach, because most inflammatory problems start down here. So I ended up giving her something that was a combination of remedies for the gut lining and for the lungs. And almost within a week or so, the itching of her skin subsided. I just happen to think that was the reason I remember it, because it's unusual to get such quick results in such a complex condition. But it's a reminder that if you can find the right button, then quite big things can happen. I was lucky to find the right button. And progressively, over the ensuing few months, the skin problem disappeared to the extent that she was my dream patient. She said, "I don't need your herbs anymore." That, to me, is my biggest reward, that they can move on. They don't need help anymore. It sticks in your mind because it was a hugely demanding condition that got better without, and it had been going for a long time. It had been going 3 or 4 years by the time she saw me. And it resolved very quickly with what seemed to be totally irrelevant treatments, but there was a rationale for them. Karen, 37, panic attacks, major anxiety problems. Heaven knows, there's a lot of that about. It turns out that when she was hospitalized when she was 20 with jaundice, which is a liver problem, all the processing, all the detox processes are in the liver. It's the gateway from the digestion. It handles emotions. It handles the immune system. It's an amazing organ. It's self-correcting, by the way, so it fixes itself very quickly if you give it the right nudge. She had jaundice, so immediately a little bell goes off, and at an age when that could mean long-term liver damage, hepatitis. She's ended up with very little appetite. She feels full easily, gains weight easily, and often feeling nauseous, which is definitely a sign of liver distress still. Menstrual cycle's very erratic. She had early COVID, again another big hammer blow. And the COVID was before her main symptoms of panic attacks set in. So I use that as an example of the way in which what goes on up here in the brain is linked with what goes on lower down in the gut. Interesting point. When we were living in caves, the best place to be was in the cave, because outside was dangerous. The only thing that got you out, hunger. And when we look at the way in which the cells are, the machinery inside the cell, we find that the mechanisms managing anxiety are the same as the system managing appetites and food processing. So the idea of linking anxiety with metabolism is basic. This was an exact answer. So the mix of herbs that I gave her had nothing for the anxiety at all. It was all to do with metabolism. And so it included milk thistle, barberry, an oriental herb called bupleurum, artichoke leaf, and an Indian remedy called gymnema, which is called sugar destroyer, which reduces your hankering for sweet. first goal was to manage her sugar cravings, because that seemed to be a key part of what she was saying, and to improve her liver functions. This was very quick, and she became more settled over several weeks and months. Then the next thing that happened was her menstrual cycles became clearly where the trouble was, and she was most likely to be distressed around the period. So we shifted to include women's remedies, which were then included in the mix to help manage the hormonal ebb and flow around the menstrual cycle. And 3 months, which is the normal time for cycles to begin to turn, her cycles began to steady, and so did the rest of her symptoms. Nothing to do with anxiety, just dealing with these core functions. So there's a couple of examples of, how we approach things differently. If Karen had gone to most other practitioners, she would have had something for her nerves.
I do really want to talk about, you use the term women's herbs?
Women's, yeah.
Women's herbs. I do want to talk about that. And I do also want to talk about fertility in the menstrual cycle and things like PCOS, because I'm super interested in that, which might surprise some people. But obviously there's women in my life that struggle with those things. So I do want to get on to that. I think a second ago, you pointed at the stomach when you said that we treat down here.
Yes.
Is that really the place to start to understand?
Well, it's a place to start plants, because that's where they go.
So tell me, what do I need to know about this region, the stomach, the gut?
Wow.
In order to have a sort of foundational knowledge,
Yeah.
so that we can then start talking about ibuprofen, painkillers, fevers,
Yeah.
all these kinds of things.
Well, very simply, we think our intelligence is up here. We've got a brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
As soon as you swallow something, until it comes out the other end, we have no control over what goes on down there. Decisions are being made as the food traverses down the tube, and there's a long tube. It's about 20 feet of small intestine that has to go around, and then like another 2 or 3 feet of large intestine. It used to take about 18 hours to go through, and we now, because we're sedentary, it take longer. But all that time, intelligent decisions are being made by the digestive system, what to do with this, what to do with that. And the lining of the gut is full of sensors, receptors we call them, that are picking up chemical cues and responding. So as the food changes, as it's digested, as the bile from the liver comes in, it's picking off these signaling devices and switching on a whole series of metabolic, hormonal, all sorts of other functions, all controlled, major choreography going on here, without us even knowing about it. And then, just when you thought this was wonderful, you add something called the microbiome. Now, when I was at school, and it was a long time ago when I was doing medical sciences, there's the bowel flora, and they help with digestion, vitamin K, one or two other things, they might be quite useful. Now, the microbiome runs the show. And it's huge. We thought we knew what the kidney did. We thought we knew what the heart did. We thought we knew what the brain did. We know they only do it because they work with the microbiome. It's running the show.
And the microbiome is the billions of bugs in our gut.
Trillions. We've got more of those little critters than we have of our own cells, so much more. So they are huge. They've got about 100 times as much genetic capacity as we do.
We've got more bugs in our gut than cells.
Yes.
So we're basically...
We're walking gut bags, yes.
We're walking bacteria.
Yeah. Yeah, there's more bacteria than there are us. I mean, it's a bit of a gobsmacking thought. And, obviously people want... No. I mean, the bugs will keep them there. One of the big issues of the day are antibiotics, which we know are becoming a serious health issue now. The World Health Organization and others say very seriously that antibiotic resistance, antimicrobial resistance, as they call it, is the biggest threat we have. Soon, going into a hospital and getting an operation will be a real risk, because hospital-borne infections are increasingly resistant to antibiotics. We're piling them in to us, but also to the animals that we grow. A lot of them are full of antibiotics, and that means that the diversity of the microbiome is being reduced. We call that biodiversity. There's a biodiversity issue in here. But even with the diminished flora that we have They still pretty much run the show. And a lot of the fruits and vegetables, particularly the ones with colours in them, actually feed those guys down there and help them to perform better. And one good reason to, as we say, eat the rainbow, just get those colours in. But yes, I mean, as you can see, if I start talking about the gut, I'm not going to stop for the next month.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favour. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.